Hello everyone, it's Jamal Thomas. Welcome to the Progressive Soapbox. So guys, I planned on a few shows today, so I don't know if there's going to be one after this one, but maybe. Let me check everything, make sure everything is up and doing what it's supposed to do. This guy is a little too big, so let's shrink him a little bit. Let me check the sound. Sometimes the sound drops from video to video. This. Perfect. All right, good. So first, I want to thank all my subscribers. I want to thank the people who view and watch these videos. You guys are immensely appreciated. Also, the people who donate Super Cash and the people who donate through Patreon. You guys are immensely appreciated. I am still having the viewer appreciation day tomorrow, so that's still going to be there. In which case, I'm going to ask for questions and everything else from patrons to fulfill the rule set that I put in my Patreon thing. I'm trying to abide by it. It's not the easiest thing in the world because it's something that's new, but I'm trying to abide by those items that are in the Patreon thing. And so that's going to take place on the 15th of each month. I got to be honest, I thought I would be having a conversation with Sane Progressive today. So I was ill prepared to do several sets of this, but there is something else I want to talk about beyond the ones I did earlier today. I've made the argument that the problem is not one or the other, the problem is both, meaning party-wise. The problem is a certain amount of complacency in the public, but definitely one party or the other is not your saviors, even though it feels like you're in somewhat of a binary system or a binary choice, and that the media plays one side against the other as if these things are actually different. It's like, Pepsi arguing about Coke and Coke arguing about Pepsi, when the honest thing, when you pull yourself back from it, is these things are functionally the same. On a political spectrum, these things are functionally the same. There are minute differences between those two, whereas Democrats take this political position of, we're least worse. That's our given. We're corporations. Our advertisement is, we're least worse. Vote for us. Now, catch in the real world, when you're comparing to other countries, the Republican Party is off the political spectrum, and Democrats will be a right-wing party in, let's say, even Britain, for that matter. It's amazing when you put it into a world context what the parties actually represent. Right now, there's a Unity Commission, or there was a Unity Reform Commission. That Unity Reform Commission had put forth things that it wanted to see, changes that it wanted to see in the Democratic Party. Now, I've made the case that this is somewhat of a dog and pony show, in that your leverage in this has been the fact that people were willing to leave the party. You had like 14 million people that left the party. The leverage came from that. That's the only place your leverage came. There was nothing outside of you acting on your behalf other than that leverage and them understanding that, oh my God, 14, 15 million people left the party. Your leverage is ebbing away. They believe that they're going to take the House and the Senate. And what I will tell you is, if they take the House and the Senate, the leverage that you once had fades away. It fades away because, for a very basic political point, how are you going to get people to do something that they don't want to do? Now, how are you going to push politicians in the Democratic Party to do something that is against their best political interests? Meaning they have donors, they have people who give them cash, who expect certain things of them for the money and the cash that they give them. How are you going to push Democrats to do something that they don't want to do? One of the key points here is Republican parties, the party itself, is serving a particular interest. That interest is so far off the political spectrum, it's no need to even talk about it. But Democrats, the left, meaning if you want to get something accomplished, and I say it, let me put this in this context. There is a group on the left that has boiled down into two main camps: the reformers versus the people who want to revolt, who wants to change. Now, the people who want to change this looks at this and says, we need to be out of this system. Meaning, we need to stop this inane voting for Democrats and pretending as if in some magical, glorious moment, some great euphoric moment, this triumphant moment, that something different takes place. We strategically make this vote in hopes that something later on takes place that has never taken place. Okay. You have this other camp that says, well, no, if you actually want something done, standing in a solidarity of no is the thing that changes things. You have a unity commission because they think, or they thought, that all of these people were leaving the party. They were looking for some way to mend the gap, to bring these people back into the party, to pull them back into the charade that is the Democratic Party. And for the most part, you got actual policy positions. I just want to make this part. The policy positions, nothing is approved until everything is approved, meaning you've got nothing. But at the very least, you have a positioning point, an argument point. That's something that has never happened, at least not in my awareness, or not something that's happened recently. So good on you for that. But that is not the actual, like you still have to go through several items of evaluation before those things go through, and it's very possible that you might get some, but not necessarily all, particularly not the main ones that you want to get. But I guess I'm trying to make this point, that you didn't get that on your own steam. You didn't get that because you were bitching and moaning. You didn't get that because there were activists and people complaining and fighting and, you know, battling in the streets. You got that because people left. You got it because people left. That is experiential reality. That is what took place. You had a bunch of people leave, they freaked out, and they decided to have a unity reform commission to get those people back. Your leverage in this is the capacity to walk. Say, I'm done. That's your leverage. Being complacent is not leverage. Bitching and moaning and complaining and crying is not leverage, especially when they know at the end of the day, they will be the likes of the left going out on their channels in a person-to-person saying, even though this person in no way represents my values, I need you to go out and vote for that person. There are people who think the Unity Reform Commission is, you know, be it our revolution or elements of TYT, that are pushing for it. And look, I've said on my show once before, if you guys get through the changes that you're trying to get through, good on you. At the very least, I would be forced to say, yes, they've made some level of progress and some level of change. The catch is, they have not implemented those changes. This is still, you know, being wrangled over. And not just being wrangled over, the people who've been pushing for this have been kind of making this point of, okay, these guys are resisting these changes. The point of this video is to kind of get across this thing that the issue is both. It's not one or the other. The issue is both. The philosophical responsibility to represent the left in this party, in this country, is on Democrats. That's their philosophical responsibility. One party, we don't need to believe in science. We don't need to believe in assistance or helping other people. We're pure individualists. Fuck all to society and the rest of the world. I got mine. You can go fuck yourself. Now, the second party is, yes, that too, with modifications on the side, meaning they're slightly different. The problem is, that's not their talking point. If that was a Democratic talking point, in the same way that that's the Republicans' talking point, we would not be having this conversation. We would be, somewhere else. Unfortunately, that's not the case. Democrats talk in a particular way. They try to take on this essence of FDR, even though they look more like Ronald Reagan. Just more rapacious, meaning worse. I think there's even a video of Obama saying, yeah, a few years ago, I would have been a Republican. I would have been a Republican that was okay with, premarital sex or something. The only point I'm trying to make is Democrats are not your saviors. As bad as you think Trump is, Democrats are not your saviors. They're in this game, this Chinese finger trap, where they've realized that it's politically advantageous to us to position ourselves against those maniacs. And we could be as obsequious to cash as they are, with one exception, just being less worse. This is our position. This is our political gamesmanship. This is what we do. Now, I'm saying that to drain power away from that is to not support that. That's my point. I'm going to show you a video of somebody else who agrees with me that Democrats are just as obsequious to cash as Republicans. Now, mind you, they take a different tack. They wanted you to vote for Hillary Clinton and everything else. But the argument they make is the argument that any of us would make. And this argument is correct. They end up with a different answer, but the argument is correct. Take a look at this. And again, my point in all this is, Democrats are not your saviors. Donald Trump is not your savior. The problem in this situation is both. It's not one or the other. Democrats are just as obsequious to cash as Republicans. The gamesmanship that they use in this case is we're less worse. Now, I want to nail this in. The way to change this is to not be a part of this. If those people who were in the Unity Commission, if they made the ultimatum, like, look, we're not even going to be a part of this. You have all of these millions of people that stepped away from this process. We're with them. We're with them. We're with those millions of people. Because ultimately, we need things to change in a particular way, and you're not going to get to change those things. Now, I create the metaphor of them being enablers. The drug addict, alcoholic boyfriend that has sex with the maid that you found that doesn't wash his hands when he fixes his food, all that stuff, or fixes your food. This particular person who you're with, and then the moment where you talk about leaving, they call you, you're a slob, nobody would love you, there's nowhere else to go. And many of these people say, you're right, there's nowhere else to go. And they would bitch and moan at him. They would complain when he's shooting up. They would do all these things. But the fact is, that guy is never changing because he knows you're not going anywhere. At the end of the day, all your bitching and moaning, at the end of the day, you're going to be where you've always been. Enabling. The party dies or that party reforms. I'm okay with either one. I'm okay with either. It's not so much that I love the repercussions of that, meaning Donald Trump is a fucking maniac. But it's also, I realize that if things are to be accomplished, you can't look at these things from the context of one election cycle. You have to look at this stuff over an arc. The fact is, we've moved further and further to the right under the strategy of reformers. The problem is both, not one or the other. Democrats give a fig leaf to certain things, which makes them, I would argue, more problematic in this case. But the problem is both, not one or the other. A position of saying, I'm done, will get you further than saying, I want to bitch and moan and at the end of the day be complacent. Let's take a look at this. This is Cenk Uygur arguing that Democrats are essentially hamming it up with their donors while excluding lefties from the process. I'm letting him do it because he makes the argument pretty damn well. I just, again, disagree with him on how to get those results, but I'll let him make the argument.
Huffington Post has a really interesting story about how Democrats are trying to take back seats in across the country in the different state races. Now, they've had a lot of success doing that lately, but it has been unexpected candidates, not the ones that have gotten the most financial backing, but the ones that have gotten the most grassroots support. Has the Democratic Party learned anything from that? Unfortunately, most of you know how this story is going to end. No, not remotely. So Itai Vardi at HuffPost with an excellent article, so I'm going to quote it at length. Begins this way. When Democratic legislators gathered in a hotel in Portland, Maine for a 2-day policy conference last August, they were joined by a host of corporate interests who have good reason to want in on those conversations. Indeed, those interests do not necessarily align with the citizens. The meeting of the Democratic Legislative Campaign Committee, the party arm responsible for supporting state legislative candidates, was closed to the press and billed as an off-the-record event. So let's be clear about this. Democratic legislators get together. It is closed to the press. It is closed to the public. That means you are not allowed to see it, but it is open for business. So let's get into those details. The Finance Council includes companies, trade groups, labor unions, and public interest organizations who pay anywhere from $12,000 to more than $100,000 to the DLCC. In return, the conference provided an opportunity for donors to interact with state legislators, many of whom head their respective chambers from around the country. And yes, unfortunately, the leadership makes the most important decisions at the state houses, assemblies, and senates all across the country. And they are the ones who are invited to meet with their corporate and union sponsors and donors. As long as you've got enough cash to play, you will get your say. The Portland conference included prominent representation from the pharmaceutical and health insurance industries, including lobbyists from America's Health Insurance Plans, a national trade group that is currently lobbying against Vermont Senator Bernie Sanders' Medicare for All bill, representatives from the Association for Accessible Medicines, Eli Lilly, Sanofi, Sanovian Pharmaceuticals, Anthem, Merck, Novartis, and Vertex all also attended. So you're not invited, but the pharmaceutical companies are invited. And then when you try for single payer in different states, all of a sudden it's blocked. You don't know why it's blocked. You have a sneaking suspicion. Those folks contribute a lot of money to those politicians. And you give a lot of money to politicians, and then you get to have nice cushy meetings with them in Portland, Maine, where you can talk their ear off for hours and hours and tell them how important it is to not have single payer, to not have Medicare for all, to make sure that those private pharmaceutical companies and healthcare and insurance companies continue to make overwhelming profits, how important it is for business and for the quote unquote economy, but not necessarily for the citizens. Representatives from the Edison Electric Institute, the powerful national trade group advancing utilities interests, were also present, as were the American Fuel and Petrochemical Manufacturers, the Nuclear Energy Institute, McDonald's, Coca-Cola, Comcast, Monsanto, eBay, and Wells Fargo. You don't have to hate those companies. I like a Big Mac. I've been known to have a Coke time or two. I probably have unfortunately consumed something Monsanto has made, but that isn't the point. The point is, should corporations be able to have an audience that is paid for with your state legislators? Do you get the same kind of access? I know the answer. The answer is hell no. And I tell you this, at the state level, it's actually way better than the national level. Sometimes you actually can talk to your state legislators. But is it fair that these companies get to pay all this money and get special access? And do you think that the special access does not eventually wind up influencing the politicians? Does anybody really believe that anymore? I know on cable news they say, oh, they are all honorable gentlemen and ladies from these states, and they have different ideas and ideology and philosophy. But the overwhelming majority of Americans know that in reality, the number one philosophy is who's writing my checks. And if it's a union, maybe I'll represent the union. If it's a corporation, I will definitely represent the corporation. Where are citizens in that equation? Like I explained, there were also unions, and here's HuffPost on that. Major labor unions also attended, including the International Union of Painters and Allied Trades, Iron Workers International, and International Brotherhood of Teamsters, as well as representatives from Americans for Responsible Solutions, which advocates for gun control. Now,
just to inject something real quick, the unions might have been included, but come on. If you're talking about the amount of money that's donated coming from the standpoint of a union versus the standpoint of the corporation, it doesn't compare. I'm sorry, it doesn't compare. It's a worthless endeavor for those unions to even be in there. It's like they're there for show. You have a television show. There's 5 people, 4 are white, and then you have the token black guy. That's you, unions. You're the token black guy. You're the guy who beams down on Star Trek in the red shirt that gets the axe. That's you. You're the unions. That's you. You don't get what you want from that process. Ultimately, at the end of the day, the people who are going to get what they want from the process are people who have this massive mounds of cash. And they're having this interaction with one another because they are getting access, not you. You have not flourished in this process. In the last 40 years, you have not flourished. You have assiduously supported Democrats because you were terrified of the other guy, but you have not flourished. You have not flourished. I have no idea why you're in this room. I have no idea why you're in this room. I'm going to let Jink finish on this, but grow a spine. You're being had. They think you're stupid. Let's take a watch. Let's finish.
I like gun control. I like unions, generally speaking. And I used to belong to a union, and I think unions help to do collective bargaining. Do I want to hurt unions? No. Do I want to take away power from the unions? No. But do I want unions to be able to give cold hard cash to politicians and hope that that doesn't unduly influence them? No, 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 no. I don't want unions doing it. I don't want corporations doing it. And by the way, unions, I got news for you. There's a hell of a lot more corporations than unions, and they have a hell of a lot more money. You are going to be on the perpetual losing end of that equation. I don't know when it's ever going to get through to you. Get money out of politics, all money. DLCC Communications Director Mara Sloan.
One last thing on that point. Cenk is right on that. Cenk is absolutely right, completely right. You're in an arms race that you can never win. Even if you could give money to the Democratic Party for whatever reason you do that, do you honestly believe Jeff Bezos has like $100 billion? That's him. Now, how much does Amazon have? How much does Apple? How much does all of those industries that these guys have? The most that you could get is the amount of money that you're giving from your revenue, meaning the people who are donating to you. But those corporations have massive amounts of cash. Like, you're talking about trillions of dollars. You have no capacity here to fight a fight in this way. None. I'm sorry, none. Your best bet in this is to join this thing of we need something different. Because at the end of the day, they're looking at you saying you have nowhere else to go. And they're using your talents, they're using your manpower, they're using your labor for their ends. But their ends are not necessarily the ends that you would choose under normal circumstances. At least not what people would consider pro-labor. At best, they may be apathetic. But that apathy has led to your demise and your doom in this. The only answer that makes sense, from a union standpoint, meaning the only position that makes sense, is to get money out of politics entirely. We don't want the influence. I don't want the influence, whether it's you or whether it's some major corporations. Get money out of politics. That is the position that unions should have for your own survival. For your own survival, that's not an arms race you're going to win. I have no idea why you're fighting on those grounds. So let's let him finish.
Said the policy conferences are forums for legislators to engage with each other and share new ideas, as well as an opportunity for legislators to interact with industry leaders and learn more about policy positions of both the legislators and the organizations. Now, of course, they're going to frame it that way, and I'm giving you their perspective. There's their quote on it. Oh, we're just trying to learn. I didn't know what the position of the oil companies and the pharmaceutical companies were. Now that they've paid hundreds of thousands of dollars, now I know their positions. This is all about education. Does anyone really believe that? Get all the money out. Wolf-pac.com to get the money out. Do it right now. And if you want uncorrupted Democrats, well, then choose ones that don't take corporate PAC money. That's justicedemocrats.com. Okay. The Finance Council members who paid $35,000 or more to the DLCC were granted the opportunity for one-on-one meetings with state legislators slated for 90 minutes during the second day of the conference, according to the agenda. Well, they get one-on-one meetings. You get usually nothing. One state legislator who asked not to be named because he's received assistance from the DLCC said he felt, quote, uncomfortable about the abundance of corporate interests. Now, they have one particular example of a former United States Senator, Mark Begich, and I think that it is instructive, so I wanted to quote that as well. The DLCC conference also featured former Democratic Alaska Senator Mark Begich, who joined the legal and lobbying firm Brownstein, Fayette, Farber, and Schreck as a strategic advisor after leaving Congress in 2015. Begich has backed Alaska's oil and gas industry in his 6 years in the Senate and co-founded the New Deal, a centrist Democratic group initially described as supporting pro-business progressives that now defines itself with the more neutral pro-growth progressives tag. Brownstein, Fayette, Farber, and Schreck's robust energy and mining practice includes such clients as Freeport LNG, Citgo Petroleum, Cobalt International Energy, and Colorado Oil and Gas Association. Begich also runs his own Anchorage-based consulting shop, Northern Compass Group, and in late 2016 called for opening the Arctic to offshore drilling. Look at that. A Democrat who worked for the oil and gas industry basically when he was a senator, then goes through the revolving door, goes and becomes a lobbyist for them, and then goes and talks to the current legislators and tells them, oh yeah, oil and gas is awesome. And then shovels money in their direction as money was shoveled in his direction. And then all of a sudden you've got offshore drilling in the Arctic just like they wanted. Now in this case.
Now, mind you, he's not talking about Republicans. These are Democrats. Look, man, I make the argument The Democrats are as obsequious to cash as Republicans. They fall in line just like Republicans. They may try to come up with different reasons and everything else. And yes, they told us hope and change stuff and all. At the end of the day, who's paying me? Who's giving me cash? And there's a secondary part to this. This guy, this senator who's going there, is showing something else that's somewhat more implicit. Hey, I got a job with one of these guys. Like when I finish, doing this political stuff, when I finish, getting my knees dirty and being obsequious to the people who are paying me, sucking on the tit of some rich corporation after the next, you too can be like me. You too can be a hero and essentially sell out your values and the things that you yourself believed in, calling yourself a pro-business progressive. You're embarrassing. Absolutely embarrassing. Showing him, meaning, look, if you take the money now, if you take the money into a particular agenda now, that money will be there for you if you run. And the second point, when you finally decide you want out of this, you can be like me. You can be a corporate sellout tool just like me. Don't you want to be like me? How much money are you going to have to give to your wife, your family, your kids, and all this other stuff? Not to mention the status associated with all the money that you get and knowing that your needs will be met in this kind of illustrious and over-the-top way. You too can be a corporate sellout like me. Shred your values. That's all you need to do. I like that Jake is making this argument, and he's making this argument well. And I agree with him on this argument. So I'm going to let him finish a little bit more of this. But the main point I want to make to this is you're in a game at this point. This is not one of those things where one guy's good, the other guy's bad. Both are bad. Both of these situations are bad. One is using the other and pivoting off the other in order to get votes. Not living up to any good particular expectation. Just there to be the opposition to bad and batshit crazy. If Democrats were in any other country, even in the UK, they would be a right-wing party. And they play this game because Republicans have gone so far off the reservation that they can be less worse. We can be the conservatives. Here in the United States, we can be the conservatives, as if we were in Britain, we could be the conservative party. The difference is, there's a party that is more batshit crazy, that us being this far to the right allows them to be that batshit crazy, and since we cede so much ground, so much territory. I mean, I'm letting him finish, but the problem here, yes, Republicans are crazy. But listen to what he's saying here. I mean, these guys are just getting bribed. And these guys are literally just smoozing it up with the people who are there willing to bribe them. That should make that should do something. Like, it should make your stomach turn. Let's keep going. Because, by the way, those same guys who's being bribed by this is going to now come out to you and look at you with a straight face, knowing they're being bribed. They're going to look at you with a straight face. And they're going to say some really lefty shit. It's like, we believe in a better America. We want to get jobs, we want to do this, we want to do that. At the end of the day, however, remember, those are the same guys who are in those meetings smoozing it up with the people who essentially want to give them money to do certain favors. Those favors will not be in your interest, I promise you. Let's let Jink go a little bit further on this.
It was Republicans had enough votes and Trump could do it all on his own. But oftentimes when they need Democratic votes, just enough Democratic votes appear to make all those positions possible. And then what do they tell you? Oh, there was nothing we could do. What could we do? Oh, well, golly gee, we had to do what the Republicans wanted. Oh, are they also our donors? What a fun coincidence.
It's not a coincidence. That is not a coincidence at all, which is kind of my point. You're stuck in a game. The same people are playing both or paying both. The masters, meaning in this case, who are paying these guys, is for all intents and purposes the same people. They don't necessarily care who's in power in this case because they get off with both. The divide that you're feeling on the left is because the left is not really Democrats. At least what the Democratic Party has become is something fundamentally different than what used to consist of the left in the 40s and the 50s and the 60s and so on. The party has to some degree split. Now, the reformers are trying to make an argument that, hey, even though we split, even though we're somewhat different now, we can find a way to make these ends, to mail these ends. I'm saying that is folly. They're still being paid. They're still being paid by the same people. They're having these things out in the open. They're still taking the cash, meaning they're still going to do the favors because they understand something. Regardless of how much you complain, if people are willing to come back to the party, then it doesn't matter. Nothing matters. If you're willing to give them your vote and put them back in office, knowing that they're bribed, then nothing matters. And nothing matters. I mean, ultimately, they don't need to change. They have no impetus to change. They have no reason to change. If people are going to be complicit, if people are going to be enablers, and if people are still going to run back to them to vote. Right now, the thought is Democrats may take the House and they may take the Senate. Now, while I would agree, this may actually not be a bad idea, just from the standpoint of keeping these guys in check or keeping Trump in check, because I think Trump is a fucking maniac. There is a political consequence. Meaning, what Unity Reform Commission? What commission? You guys wanted a reform commission? What commission? Aren't these changes? Oh, aren't these changes nice? Okay. Go away now. Why do we need a reform commission if ultimately people will put us back in office? Your leverage is ebbing away. That's all I'm saying. Let's go to the next one. Yes, Jake is right. These guys are being bribed. These guys are being openly bribed. This is... Look at this guy. It's true he has no neck, but don't let his not having a neck get in the way of what he's saying at this point.
And when Democrats continue to say, down with the billionaires, we can't stand the rich, a lot of people want to be rich. So is it the right message that the Democrats are going with?
It's so effing wrong.
Whoa.
I've talked to Schumer. I've talked to Wyden. I've talked to Pelosi.
And said what?
And I said, if you use the term billion again, I'm done.
Why?
Because it's aspirational. I didn't start with anything. Just penalize everyone that's done well. We all want to do well. And we should be the party of doing well.
That party already exists. It's called the Republican Party. Also, there's something else. And yeah, he doesn't have a neck, and I think he drinks in order to deal with the whole thing of not having a neck. But he's also... I called Pelosi. I called Schumer. I told him not to use that word billionaire again. I was effing angry. I was drinking, looking at myself in the mirror without a neck. I understand, dude. You don't want... Look, my point to this is, him calling up Nancy Pelosi. I don't have Nancy Pelosi's number. I don't have Chuck Schumer's number. He apparently has their number where he can call these guys up. And he's on MSNBC without a neck saying that he is bribing the politicians. Let him finish, because I realized I just cut him off before he got to the point.
We should be a party of business and leadership. And it is very, very disturbing when I hear the millionaire or billionaire word. And I've told them to stop it, knock it off. Because everyone wants to do really well. And this is the world of aspirations.
Then are you worried that the Democratic Party is going too far to the left?
So much so, it drives me nuts. So much so, it would make me quit the party. And I've made it very clear, I'll cut your money off.
There we are. That's the point. I will cut your money. I will stop putting dollars in your G-string if you say that word billionaire again. Let me ask you this. What if the word billionaire needed to be said? What if the conversation of class needed to be had? This guy sounds like a Republican, but he's living in the Democratic Party. You can't serve two masters. You need to pick a pony. Pick a pony. He's, for all intents and purposes, saying, I call Nancy Pelosi, I call Chuck Schumer, and I told him, shut up about class. Shut up. And if you don't shut up about class, I will cut your dollars off. No more money in your G-string. No more money in your G-string. No more getting your knees dirty, buddy. If you're going to bring up the term billionaire, we're done. Think about that. Income inequality is at its worst that it's ever been. This guy is making money hand over fist. And yet, it's not enough. It's not enough. I don't want to deal with the actual practical issues of poverty in the United States. I don't want to deal with income inequality. Don't bring it up. Don't bring it up. I will cut your money off if you mention that term billionaire. If you mention that term billionaire, not even millionaire, billionaire. That's amazing. These are the guys who Cenk Uygur is talking about that are paying the members of the Democratic and Republican Party. This guy just so happens to live in the Democratic Party, so he pays them. But there are other donors. I'm making the point that why are you giving your support to a party that lives for these guys? When you look at that Princeton poll made it very clear that for all intents and purposes, what you want as a voter doesn't register on the scale. What registers are people like this guy, not people with no necks. I mean, this guy in particular, plutocrats. I'm talking about class. I'm talking about class. They're the votes that matter. That's what the party has aggregated around. And are you going to be complicit in saying, we understand that they're bought. We understand that those are the people that matter to the party. We understand that issues of class and all this other stuff is not going to be brought up with the workable point of view of the party. But we're terrified of Republicans. We're terrified of Republicans. We understand that Democrats are a right-wing party, but Republicans are savage idiots, and we don't want them in office. I agree that they're savage idiots. But part of the reason why they've become savage idiots is because you've allowed them to go so far to the right that this is where they are now. You've normalized this thing, but that move and shift has taken place moving from left to right. The left itself had made the decision that they wanted to take cash. They wanted to take as much money as Republicans. They wanted to take more money than Republicans, believing that they can still somehow retain these kernels of who the party was. At a certain point, the people who supported that party or support the party needs to get to the point of saying, I am done backing a party that is purely there for plutocrats. Yes, they want your vote, and so they will tell you what they need to get your vote. But ultimately, at the end of the day, who they support and who they represent has nothing to do with who you are. The conversation that needs to be had is on class. And you've just heard that this guy refuses to allow them to have that conversation on class. Do you believe that the other plutocrats that Cenk Uygur was talking about that the Democratic Party was in the room with, do you believe that those guys are any way different than this guy without a neck? Let's keep going. There's more. I don't want to let this go in my argument. This woman was at the DNC Unity Reform Commission. Good on Emma Vigeland for this. Yeah, good on Emma Vigeland for this. She did a damn good job at letting this woman talk. Superdelegates is one of the most undemocratic things that you can put into some kind of political process. And in this case, you have Democrats using this as a way to keep grassroots out. Don't take my word for it, take Deborah Wasserman-Schultz's word for it. We're using superdelegates in order to keep out grassroots. Now, in the last election, the superdelegate thing was made to make it look like Hillary Clinton was further along than what she was. Oh, man, I remember a guy I worked with. He was like, oh, man, it's a foregone conclusion. She's won it. I mean, look at all the votes that she's gotten. It's like, what are you talking about? Those votes have not even been counted yet. Haven't been counted yet. But he gave a perception that she was inevitable, along with other things, that she was inevitable. But definitely the vote total, when you look at it, it makes you think that she has it in the bag. It's won. Those things were used to keep out certain candidates. There were certain people who the Democratic Party itself wanted. They have a workable point of view that does not align with what you as a lefty want. And they use the superdelegates as a club to keep out riffraff, the unwashed, people who don't necessarily ascribe to their particular point of view. For the longest time, they've made the argument that the superdelegates were there just in case that somebody got through that, oh my God, was going to flame out like nobody's business. Well, in this case, they had the person who was going to flame out like nobody's business, and they voted overwhelmingly for that person. Listen to this woman argue for this undemocratic process. Because understand, with the superdelegates, it's not who wins in regards to the vote total. You could have somebody who wins in a vote total, but because of the superdelegates chooses at that point who they want. They are such a bellwether. They have such a gravity in the sense of the number of people who they have that they can change, overwhelmingly change, who wins that vote total. That is massively undemocratic. That's my point. I may be saying that inelegantly, but what I'm saying is true.
I don't think we will repeat the mistakes of the past. We'll probably make other ones, but I don't think there'll be those.
And we talked a little bit about the superdelegate process.
Yeah.
Obviously, the superdelegates in the past two presidential primaries, or not in 2008 and in 2016, have been a really hot-button issue for the Democrats. And you said that, or the commission said, they're kind of moving towards reducing the role of superdelegates. Can you expand on that?
Sure. The resolution that enabled this commission calls for the elimination of about 2/3 of the so-called superdelegates, non-elected delegates, non-pledged. They have different names. And I'm confident that will come out of this report, and then we have to make sure the DNC itself adopts it. So, of all the things that are likely to be an outcome on December 9th when we're done voting, I would put that as a near certainty.
Well, we had supported reducing them to 0 in terms of having unbound superdelegates. There was a compromise that was reached before the convention between Bernie's campaign and Hillary's campaign to eliminate about 65% of the superdelegates. So that's the process that we're going through now. The process that was set up is a long process, unfortunately, but we are making progress. And to eliminate 65% of the superdelegates, I think, would be a major step forward.
With all of that controversy in two of the major Democratic presidential primaries, why have they not been eliminated altogether?
Because when people sit down and think about it, they realize that if you want your Democratic president to be effective, you want that president to be somebody that the members of the House and the members of the Senate and the governors and the party members can work with. And that it's not just about elections, it's about governing. We are one party, and the way the Constitution was set up, you need the president and the Congress getting together. All you need to do to understand how important this is look at what's happened to President Trump.
So do you think the elimination of the superdelegate process would lead to a Trump on the Democratic Party side?
Just so we're clear, this woman is arguing that, look, at the end of the day, this is not about what people want. This is what she's arguing. I mean, I don't know another way to cast this. It's not what people want. It's not just about elections. That the person who gets elected needs to be able to govern. Screw popular opinions. Screw what the public actually wants. The public wants something, and her point is, it's not about what the public wants. It's not about what the public wants. It's about what we as a party want, and we want that person to be able to govern. That's an amazing statement. I mean, that's an amazing statement. That's a profound statement that a party is making. We don't care about your voice in this. We don't care who you choose. Ultimately, it's us who matter in this process. We want to be able to choose somebody who can govern in the fashion that we want them to be able to govern. Screw public opinion. That's an amazing thing to say. That it really is. Let her continue.
I think that the entire political system has become vulnerable to people like Trump, who have no business being president of the United States by virtue of experience and, more importantly, by virtue of temperament. And that we have opened ourselves up to a very dangerous situation where basically kind of charismatic people can capture a political system, even when the other actors in that system know full well that that person is not capable of being president. But it doesn't mean it won't happen to the Democrats, okay? We now are led by a person who is unstable and not fit for office.
Well, what do you say to people who say that the Democratic Party is supposed to be better than the Republicans? They're supposed to have an more open process, and the superdelegates take away from that open process.
What the superdelegates tell you is what they think of the people running for president, and you have to listen to them for one reason. They actually know them.
No. Your superdelegates can tell me that without having this overwhelming weight in the voting process. If Howard Dean, if lobbyist Howard Dean wants to explain to me why he believes that Hillary Clinton is better, even though the entire state of Vermont says otherwise, then Howard Dean can do that. Howard Dean should not have an overwhelming weight in the vote in that case when the overwhelming state of Vermont says they wanted Bernie Sanders. You are giving people an overwhelming weight in the vote, and at the same token, being that we're dealing with this kind of political space of sorts, getting rid of the power of human beings to make the choice on the person of who they want. That's your argument here. That, you know, you have to listen to us because, you know, we know these people. No, we have to listen to you because you put an overwhelming weight of superdelegates in regards to who wins this process. That's what we have to listen. It's not because people want. It's not because this esoteric thing that doesn't really matter of, you know, do I really care about what Howard Dean matters? In this particular case, I have to, because Howard Dean has an overwhelming weight in the voting percent in regards to electoral votes. I think that she's finishing up with this kind of idea that human beings shouldn't be the people who choose what human beings want. The Democratic Party should be that particular choice maker.
Okay, the voters don't actually know them. The voters can be fooled, as many Republicans were fooled by Donald Trump, and they now regret it. Okay, so you want in the process, you want somebody who actually knows the candidates and can evaluate them on the basis of their ability to govern. So look at it this way. You would not go to a neurosurgeon who was not validated by other neurosurgeons, right? You would not get an electrician who wasn't accepted by other electricians. This is a very important office, and we are choosing somebody with no input from other people who govern.
The president is not an electrician. And by the way, politics is not the same thing as these kind of technical processes or technical administrations. I don't have a bunch of people involved in the process of me choosing an electrician or anything else. In this case, however, you have 300-odd million people in this country. And those people should have some degree of choice in the person who they want for that office. You have lost legitimacy. Do you understand that? Nobody likes you. You've lost your legitimacy. Even among people of your party, you have lost your legitimacy. The human being, we do not want to listen to you in regards to choosing a particular person who we want for that office. You have lost your legitimacy. We don't look at this process as being some level of integrity or integrity-filled process. You guys have used your power in superdelegates in order to put your thumb on the scale for a particular candidate. That's what this boils down to. You're being challenged on this front because you have used your power to put your thumb on the scale in regards to who the public wanted. And I got to be honest, you shouldn't have that power in the first place. You shouldn't have that power in the first place. The party gets a point of view on how they see the world, and they want to put somebody in office who holds that particular point of view in the way that they see the world, even if the rest of the public does not. Even if the majority of the public does not. So when they threw 200,000 people off the rolls in Brooklyn, I mean, if you had superdelegates, if you had open primaries, those people would be able to go register for the party they want to and vote. Now, does the fact that 200,000 people who were thrown off the rolls illegally in Brooklyn trace back to behaviors in the Democratic Party itself? Meaning, was this something that Democrats did? I'm trying to make this point that you guys have a point of view of the world, and in one process after the next, you force that point of view of the world, even when it runs counter to what other people want. Your argument here is, I need to nail this down because people need to fully understand this. Her argument here is, fuck what the public wants. Fuck what the public wants. The public doesn't know what it's talking about. They need to take our word for it. And so they need to listen to us when they're trying to make their vote. We will listen to you when you make your vote. We may discount what you say, but we will listen to you. It doesn't necessarily mean you need to have that much weight in regards to who's chosen in the primaries. Let's let her finish. Let's move on.
But let me just one more pushback. Hillary Clinton got virtually all the superdelegates before people even voted, and she lost to Donald Trump. So she wasn't the superior candidate in the eyes of the American people.
But I'm not talking about superior candidates. I'm talking about people who are able to govern.
All right, I'm ending this because she's... Look, the original argument for superdelegates, for those who don't know, maybe those who lived in Iraq, for those who are younger, the original argument for superdelegates was not governance. This is the first time I've heard that. Governance. I mean, in the first time I watched a video where a person said, no, superdelegates are about governance. They're not about the ability of a candidate to get elected. They just made that up. They just made that up. That's something that they literally crafted out of their ass. That is something they just made up. Up to this point, it has been the ability of a candidate to get elected. This idea of McGovern losing magnificently and Democrats saying, oh my God, we can't allow a lefty like this to run again. Governance had nothing to do with it. This is my point. You're using these things in ways to craft based upon what you want as a party. You're making these arguments up as you go along. It has nothing to do with governance. It was supposed to do about whether or not a candidate can get elected. And if you saw somebody who was a horrible candidate, who you thought was going to get trashed in the voting process, that the superdelegates were there to be the bellwether and to change that particular person's from getting elected or that person running in the final election. Let's keep going. So, in the Unity Commission, Nomika Kantz had the capacity to do this. And I've given Nomika a hard time on some of my other videos, but on this, I gave her applause. The problem with this, though, is it's like Neo in the Matrix. Just because he woke up doesn't mean that these guys are still in the Matrix. When Morpheus looks up at the camera at the very end, he's like, are we still, am I still dreaming? Are we still in the Matrix? He doesn't know. He doesn't know. Why does Neo have power in the Matrix? Why? I mean, in the real world. At a certain point where they're supposed to be in the real world, they're being hunted down by these machines. I think it's in the second one, Reloaded. Neo has powers. Why does Neo have powers in the real world? He's not in a simulation at that point. Now, the argument here is the power of the one transcends the Matrix. Maybe it doesn't. Is it possible that they're in a matrix within a matrix? I mean, after all, if you had the capacity where your mind was plugged into a machine, how difficult would it be to just shift your mind from one machine to the next, to the next, to the next? You could be in 1,000 different matrices. The one said he had a plan in order to deal with the stuff. Maybe the plan was a matrix within a matrix, meaning, yes, they may be still dreaming. I'm making the point that, yes, Nomika Kantz gave this awesome rebuke of what was taking place at the DNC. But doesn't matter if this was more purely just a dog and pony show. They are obsequious to their donors. The donor thing that Cenk Uygur is talking about happened after Nomika Kantz did this. And I'm going to show something else with the results of some of the things that are taking place in the Unity Commission. Updated article that just came out, which is kind of making my point for me. Both are the problem. The party that's supposed to be the left-leaning party in this country is just as obsequious to cash as the right. For all the protestations of the guys on the left, the reformers, who believe that the Democratic Party can somehow be changed, they still have to admit, grudgingly or not, that yes, these guys are still obsequious to cash. And yes, even though they're saying they have a Unity Reform Commission, is anything really going to take place with that commission? Let's take a look at this last point. Well, there one more point after this, but let's give Nomika her day in the sun.
This smells. This doesn't just smell to the public right now that the budget of the party was never put before. Forget about the budgetary committee for a second. Put before the people who have a fiduciary responsibility, whether it's Congresswoman Tulsi Gabbard, whether it's Donna Brazile when she was chair, when she was vice chair, or Vice Chair Ray Buckley, or Dr. Jim Zogby over here. That's over half the executive committee right there, had no idea where the money was going. We spent $1 billion, lost the easiest presidential race you could possibly imagine, with joint fundraising agreements. State parties weren't being funded. During the DNC chair's race, there were some state party chairs who said, I'm an acting executive director and I have $3,000 cash on hand. How are you supposed to rebuild the party if you have no idea where that money was spent? And you know what? I did go through FEC filings, and it doesn't look good. It smells. We're talking about close to $700 to $800 million between the joint fundraising agreement and the DNC being spent on 5 consultants. This is not a public outrage issue. The DNC chairs are upset, the officers are upset, and I don't know who's on the Budget and Finance Committee. I did go to the meeting. It was 15 minutes long, and there was a pie chart that was put on screen. Yeah. But I would, as a Democratic Party member of this commission, we have a duty, and people are watching us right now. The number one issue I get asked out in the public by DNC members is, what are you going to do about the budget? It is absolutely ridiculous that we are going to keep a status quo system when it basically says we're going to continue to lose 1,200 seats. Let me describe what losing 1,200 seats looks like, or the remaining seats we have. If you're in Trump, yes, but let's break that down a little bit. If you're in Arizona and you have an ectopic pregnancy, you can't go to a Planned Parenthood clinic because it's gone, because that state legislature is lost. So you have to drive over to New Mexico. And if you bleed to death on the way, you know whose fault that is? In my mind, that's a Democratic Party that wasn't funded, recruiting candidates, investing in local parties. And that is our fault, because we have put that money to the top 5 consultants. And part of that has to go to the conflicts of interests. This is outrageous. It's unethical. It's bad governance. And frankly, it's fucking, corruption. So if we do want to look at this Budget and Finance Committee, I advise that it be an elected Budget and Finance Committee. We have very clear standards of oversight, and that it is not just looking at past budgets, but putting forth a budget for debate with the people who have a fiduciary responsibility in that room, so that they can find out, is this an open bid contract? Because the budget, Congresswoman Fudge mentioned it doesn't have to do with vendors. Well, the majority of the budget goes to vendors. So we have to have a conversation about who are those vendors. I agree. And that would happen through a Budget and Finance Committee or another committee. But I think what's key is that committee has oversight and it is elected. Because right now these committees are stacked with whoever the chair decides is on the committee. And I don't know what the chair's interests are because, he's been chair for 8 months. I don't know who he's in line with. But we don't have time. We have a freak in the White House and state legislatures controlled by Republicans, and poor state party chairs like Jane Klebb having to go out there and fundraise on her own because the Democratic Party isn't able to allocate money. Well, all that money, we went to presidential races, but it was burned, lit on fire. And who suffers as a result of some consultants getting 3rd, 4th, and 5th homes? The American people. People being rounded up by ICE. Let's keep this in perspective right now. We have a duty here, and it is not just a duty to our committeemen and the status quo. It's a duty to the American people, to the Democratic Party members, to the DNC chairs, to the DNC members, the executive committee members, and the people who have a fiduciary responsibility.
She's right. She's right. There's nothing else to add. She is absolutely right. I will add, though, is this person still in the Matrix? like I understand, she's right. It's fire and fury when she's going after these guys. Fast forward 2 months, 2 or 3 months. One of the people who was kicked off one of the commissions, because, people who were affiliated with Bernie Sanders and who voted for Keith Ellison were essentially ejected from various positions that they had prior under Tom Perez. This is James Zogby. At the #Dems #Rules Committee, as they debate the Unity Reform Commission report. They keep calling it Unity Committee, ignoring the need for reform. Some want to reopen and undo compromises we've reached. This will be a mistake because without reform, unity will be at risk. Nina Turner, a big mistake. Let's see. Black women vote, but not for Bernie. That's funny. Jill Stein is calling. No one wants to unite with y'all. Let's keep going. Are you reading these comments? You're running an anti-democratic hate group. No, they're not. They're making the point to you that unity is dependent upon this idea that there's reform. And they're the reformers of the group. You haven't even gotten to the people who don't consider themselves part of the process or part of the revolt aspect of the stuff. Sanders crushes Clinton among Democrats abroad. That's funny. I guess the point I'm trying to make here is Zogby is in this commission, or I don't know if Zogby is in the commission. Let me say that differently. Zogby was part of the Reform Commission. Zogby is part of the DNC, meaning some delegate or something. He was kicked from his position, whatever his position was primarily, but still, he's part of this process. And he's making this point like, They don't even add reform into the process. They don't even bring it up. They can't bring it to themselves to even bring it up. This is months after the process was over with. And I would make the argument that the closer these guys got to realizing we may take back the House and we may take back the Senate, reform, what's the point? We're getting back what we wanted. What's the point? Where's your leverage? If you don't have all these millions of people who are willing to walk, or even if you do have these millions of people willing to walk, if you have millions more who are terrified of Donald Trump and willing to vote, what's the point of unity? What's the point of unity? Another thing that came out on Alternate was this guy. And this would be the last. Bernie supporters aren't exactly getting what they were hoping out of the DNC. The reforms would address most of 2016 anti-democratic features, but there's more vetting before they come to the full DNC. This came out February 4th, 2018. Like a slow-motion car crash, the Bernie-crat wing of the Democratic Party appears to be heading towards a collision with the party's leadership over adopting reforms that will guide the intricacies of the 2020 presidential nominating contest. The reform slate, negotiated by a Unity Reform Commission created during the 2016 Democratic National Convention in Philadelphia, addresses the most glaring anti-democratic features of the party's last presidential nominating contest. These can be very significant reforms. They include cutting by 60% the number of superdelegates, the unpledged delegates who account for the 1/6 of all votes cast to the 2016 candidate. Almost all backed Hillary Clinton, despite Bernie Sanders winning 46% of the delegates from the primaries and caucuses. The reforms will professionalize caucuses, including disclosing vote counts, which didn't happen in Iowa and Nevada. They would reform primaries, which could include same-day voter registration and allow independents to participate, unlike New York. They would impose new standards for financial transparency and avoiding conflicts of interest. The looming conflict concerns the pace and the process for bringing these reforms before the entire Democratic National Committee, which would then vote to adopt or reject them. In short, the grassroots-led Bernie-crat wing wants the reforms adopted as a package without further delay or modifications. In contrast, long-term party officials say that the package is moving through a standard process and will be vetted by the party's Rules and Bylaws Committee. The Rules and Bylaws Committee will decide whether to amend them before presenting them to the full DNC for a vote. Any changes by the Rules Panel will go back to the Reform Commission, which can endorse them or bring its original proposal to the floor. In essence, this means that there could be two competing proposals before the DNC when it meets later this year. On Friday, Our Revolution, the campaign organization created by Sanders leaders, sent out an email launching a campaign and pushing for swift action to adopt the reforms as is. We've come a long way since the Unity Reform Commission was unanimously adopted by 4,500 Democratic Convention delegates in Philadelphia, the email said, signed by 8 Sanders-appointed members of the Unity Reform Commission. Recently, DNC Rules and Bylaws Committee took up the URC's final recommendations. Our mandates are not aspirations. They have already been debated and negotiated. The DNC should adopt and implement these reforms. The tone was amplified by Norm Solomon, co-founder of the 2016 Bernie Delegates Network and grassroots group Roots Action, who said at the time for the DNC ratification was past due. We've reached a compromise. We've got a package. If there is a successful effort to fracture this package, then it works to the disadvantage of everything, he said. Roots Action, we're working with other groups to raise hell from the grassroots. The trajectory that we're on right now is not good. Here's the problem that you fundamentally miss. Raising hell with grassroots to what end? To what end? If at the end of the day, with all the bitching and crying and moaning is done, if you turn around and then will willingly support whoever the Democrat puts up, then it doesn't matter. Your bitching and moaning doesn't matter if there's no consequence ever applied to the bitching and moaning. If at the end of all this, they tell you to fuck off, they write you a note that says go fuck off. They wrote that, and that's lefties, fuck all. We're not changing. We're keeping our superdelegates. We're keeping our closed primaries. Fuck it, we're closing the other primaries. What do? What do you say? Do you still go out on your networks and say vote Clinton? Or do you grow a spine and say we're done? What do you do? I'm making the point that if there is never a consequence to the thing that you're talking about, then it doesn't really matter that you're bitching and moaning. It doesn't matter. Let's finish this. One longtime party leader contacted Alternet, rolled her eyes when hearing about Bernie-crat's demands, saying that the faction was impatient, does not understand the process, and that it's a mistake to turn this effort into an all-or-nothing equation. The other party leaders said that Bernie-crats are making incorrect assumptions about how roughly 400 DNC members are likely to vote on reforms, because they want a party that can grow and win elections. The newer folks are looking for what I consider in some cases to be massive and difficult changes to make overnight, said Debbie Kozlowski, Massachusetts Party Vice Chair and longtime grassroots activist. Nothing happens overnight. The biggest problems we have is the new participants in 2016 is they didn't understand the rules as they existed. You can't change the rules by snapping your fingers. You have to know the rules so you can change them. I think the Democratic Party's job at this point is to make sure that the rules are public. But let's make sure that people know them and understand them. Treat everything as a teachable moment, right? This is what you guys are trying to move into. You guys don't understand. You guys want changes. We don't even admit that we cheated your candidate. We don't even admit it. You're trying to sheepdog into a burning bus. That's what I say. When told about the latest campaign to pressure the DNC, she was blunt. I think they're going to yell and scream, and that's unfortunate because it doesn't get you anywhere, Kolowinski said. Enough yelling and screaming. Figure out what the rules are and come back at it. It's not over, right? If they don't get it, what they want, it doesn't mean the ball game is over. It just means that's an extended playtime, right? That's the danger, Count Solomon. It's the position of people who are on a Unity Reform Commission, the Bernie 8, that would really, really be bad. The whole concept was a negotiated reform package. Once they start breaking the package apart, they're going to splice and dice, and it's going to be a friggin' mess. It's a very strong position of, hey, this was already a compromise. It was dominated by Clinton appointees 13-8. That's actually a good point. This was already a compromise. Like, you're trying to get people who left the party because they believe the party didn't represent their interests. Fair enough. That's the point. And you added more Hillary Clinton people to the process and Bernie people. Fair enough. He's making the point that, look, this was already a compromise that was dominated by this faction of the party. If you're just slicing and dicing, you're just cutting the shit out that you don't like and adding in stuff that they were moderately on, meaning you're compromising what was already a compromise. Here's the point. Let's keep going. Now, I'm not going to read this part because this part gets into the nuts and bolts. But they're making the point that the people who are Sanders supporters are not necessarily being told the minutiae of this process. Meaning they're not getting across to their supporters that you may not get what you want out of this. They may not do anything with the superdelegates or the primaries. You may not get what you want. They're not giving them the nuts and bolts. Meaning, yes, there's going to be additional work that take place, meaning this is going to a bylaws commission. And in that bylaws commission, it's going to another commission, meaning the entirety of the DNC needs to vote on it. But there's minutia associated with those processes that the article is kind of making a point that they're not getting across very well to the people who are associated with it. And I think the main thing, the main thing in this is, look, and I'll read this part, the bottom part. The latest messaging from Our Revolution and Bernie-crats does not discuss the DNC reform process at this level of detail. Friday email from Our Revolution said, for example, we're working with progressive partners across the country to push these changes over the finish line. Join us in taking the first step by signing the petition to your state's DNC members today and tell them to support the Unity Reform Commission's recommendation. Larry Cohen, who led the Sanders delegation on the Reform Commission and helps lead Our Revolution, did not reply to Alternet's request seeking comment on their strategy. It may be that Bernie-crats feel the need to keep up the pressure throughout the rest of the DNC's reform process, no matter how long it takes. But at the very least, right now, it appears that there's expectation for fast action is only likely to cause more strife. Bernie-crats are telling their ranks that they expect the Rules and Bylaws Committee to swiftly rubber stamp the Reform Commission's proposals. Meanwhile, the co-chair of the panel and the other longtime party members are saying that's not how the process works, and that there is not a zero-sum take-it-or-leave-it game. In other words, this pressure and posturing is pointing towards more confrontation between Bernie-crats and the political party they're seeking to change. In essence, I understand that many of you wanted the party to change. I understand that you guys wanted or believed that the Unity Reform Commission was some kind of pathway to change. I have said it was a dog and pony show, but I have said also that if they actually got those changes over the finish line, that at the very least, like I said, they would make progress. Where is their progress? Where's their progress? That's my question. I still say both parties are the problem. I still say that your leverage for this kind of reform commission goes away the moment they believe that you're not serious about pulling your support from that party. If you are never willing to pull your support, meaning I am done towing this line, then this idea of reform goes away. There's no reason for reform at that point if they're not willing to toe the line. Meaning, and I'll end it on this, if they realize that, hey, we're going to win again in 2020, even in 2018, if we're going to win again in 2018, where's your leverage for reform at that point? They're not going to reform because they want to reform. I mean, clearly, if that was the case, they would have done it already. You had some leverage. You had some pressure. That leverage was 1,200 people leaving the party. But more people started coming back to the party when they saw how insane of a maniac Donald Trump was. Where's your leverage? I would say this. You have a better leverage of standing in solidarity with the no, meaning your network, saying, no, we're done. We're done. I understand that in the short term things will get bad. But at the end of the day, your leverage is ebbing away with the party itself because the party understands that you will always come back. So, I don't want people to believe that Donald Trump is their savior. By the same token, I don't want them to believe that Democrats are their savior. Both parties are the problem. There needs to be this focal point of no, this solidarity of no. So, I will end it on that. Let's see who's here. This one went long, but I want to focus my argument on the divisions that I think are on the left. And I think those divisions boil down to the ancient argument of reform or revolt. I think we're past this idea of reform, personally. But at the same token, I think if you want to actually save the party, you're going to have to be able to leave the party. Unlikely ally. It would be super useful to have Bernie or Bernie-esque win. I think you're trying to say win the Democratic nominations. But if they rig the primary again, there's no point in voting Democrat. So, unlikely ally, I think that's the thing that lefties are trying to accomplish. I think in their minds, and even in my mind, there's a path here. The question is that a path that will be taken? Say, for the moment, Democrats win the House and the Senate in 2018. Let's say that takes place. In 2020, Bernie Sanders wins the primaries. If Bernie Sanders batters Donald Trump, like a wave election, in the state houses, in the other elections, you have this thing where they get rid of the gerrymandering and they enshrine whatever those districts are going to be for the next, I think, 10 years. And Sanders is Sanders. I'm the president of the United States and I'm pushing for a left agenda, like an actual left agenda. And you put Democrats in this position of, am I going to support the guy who actually is on the left? Or am I not going to support that guy? And Sanders runs against those Democrats who are not on his particular agenda and gets some of those Democrats knocked off. And he pushes hard with these ideas that Democrats are in power for a leftist agenda of the country itself, reshaping what it means to be a Democrat in the United States. That is a euphoric path. That is a euphoric path. And if we're being honest, that's the first path that the left has had in a very long time. Meaning when you look at the political, tea leaves, and you're trying to figure out what could potentially take place, that is something that reasonably could take place. But there is a lot of assumptions in that process that I don't necessarily think we have. Are superdelegates going to be gotten rid of? We don't know that. Are they even going to get rid of the 60% that they negotiated? We don't know that. Are they going to cheat in certain states again? We don't know that. We don't know. We don't know if it's a fair process. And I guarantee you, if it is not a fair process, you're not going to get those people who in 2016 bow their heads and just voted for Hillary Clinton even though they knew they were cheated. You do not have those people anymore. I can't be certain of that, but I would almost guarantee you that rigging an election twice, you're going to lose a huge number of people in that process. So that's my opinion on it. I think there's a chance for the left. Do I think that chance is going to be taken? I have no idea. No idea. Dutch, that was easy to say when it comes to Americans. Elections hard to do. Let's see. No, they're not. Pat Hacker. Don't vote Democrat or Republican, vote independent and third party shatters the party structure. Yes, agreed. Even if you realize, even if you get like 15, 20% voting for something else, you shatter the party structure. You shatter it. It makes it seem like those other parties at that point are viable. People need to pull themselves out of the political thing. I understand that Republicans are terrifying. But if there's something that you actually want to get done, shattering this particular game, shattering this Chinese finger trap of a party system that we've allowed to take place is the way to do it. Being complacent is not. There is no strategy with complacency that's going to get you what you want as lefties. Jay Scott, I tried kicking, but his channel, his choice. I still like Jamal a lot. Okay, I don't know what happened. I don't know the conversation. I lost track of that conversation. The main thing is that they have the means to override decisions if needed. Pat Hacker. Let's see. The courts need to step in and force reforms on the party. There is no other way. Yeah, because ultimately the party does what the party wants. You have two parties, and those parties essentially make the rules. Agreed, Gardner. Most Americans have never been taught that there is at least 5 different periods of party rule. These two parties don't have to hold power forever. Pat Hacker, that is so true. Agreed. States should be able to go after superdelegates in courts. Yes. And look, that's something that Gardner had just said. And I've asked Jared Beck that. Can the political apparatus be used to attack the party apparatus? Meaning to shatter the way that these guys arrange the stuff. Can you use the courts for this process? Jay Scott, that would be amazing if it was possible. Robert Pouquet Ray, the matrix within a matrix. Then our politics is turduckins. The young turduckins, that's funny. Easier way to attack, I think. Seb67, oh, thank you, man. Guys, I appreciate your super cash. It absolutely helps with the show itself. Said67, when you guys give comments. Give comments. I like the comments also. Sometimes they're fucking awesome. Bob Romero said, Pro 92 was the last opportunity. The third-party option days are past. Bob, I would agree with you that it is difficult to do, but everything is impossible until it's done. So yes, I agree with you. It's difficult to do. I agree with you that keeping these third parties out of the debates is criminal. Because it keeps them off the stage. It makes it look as if they're not even on the stage itself in the conversation. Bob, I agree with you. It's difficult. You have my agreement on that point. Let's see. 2020 had better offer something better. You know, one thing I will say, though, is having Hillary Clinton loses presents an opportunity for 2020 that was not there if Hillary Clinton had won in 2020. I mean, think about it. You had a situation where Democrats at the very least questioned whether or not they were legitimate. You called into question their legitimacy. If you can't beat a reality show host, then yeah, your integrity, or not integrity, your legitimacy is being put to question. If Hillary Clinton won, regardless of what Hillary Clinton had done during her election, there was no way they were going to split the vote in that way. Meaning there was nobody who was going to primary Hillary Clinton in that way. Meaning you're stuck with her in 2020. And it is very possible that you were going to get a maniac that was going to win in 2020 again. You got Donald Trump running in 2016. Why do you believe that there's going to be some better on the ballot? You saw the other candidates who were up for running in this case. It wasn't the relatively sane people who were going to be on the ballot. It was one crazy after the next. They were a clown car. Why do you believe that was going to be different in 2020? Now, whether or not that person beat Hillary Clinton or not in 2020 or not, I don't know. I don't know. What I will say, though, is you have an opportunity. You have an opportunity. Meaning you don't have a president that's on the ballot in this case. You have somebody, this is up for grabs. You have this kind of interregnum in the party itself of who's going to win that candidacy. And the left actually has a real choice or real chance to be a bellwether in this particular election. I don't know how this primary is going to go. I will say that if Sanders runs in that 2020 primary, he will be a front runner. And there is the opportunity to revitalize or to change, fundamentally change, what it means to be a Democrat. And I got to be honest, if it's not Sanders, then I don't particularly care about the election. He is my only choice in that election process. Maybe a Tulsi Gabbard. He is my, for the most part, main choice. So, the natural progressive. If you want something better, vote third party and get the establishment to worry about getting your votes. Think long term. Yes. Yes, yes, yes. You have to look beyond one election cycle. Yes, yes. Progressive. Well, what's your name? What's your name? What's your name? Because I agree with you. The natural progressive. Yes, I agree. Yes. Like, people miss that. When they're talking about, you know, grassroots being aggravators and pissing off and all this other stuff. The last part that they miss out that is being willing to say no. If you're not willing to say no, they don't care. Why would they care? If at the end of the day, all the bitching in the morning, you're still there in the morning. Yes, he slaps me. Yes, he beats me. I know I have a black eye. I said I fell down the steps, but ultimately my crack-addicted, alcoholic husband slaps me. And I just take it because he says I have nowhere else to go. And I agree with him that I have nowhere else to go. Yes, I'm calling them the political... The political abused in regards to the left or in the way that this country works. The political abusers or abusees, the Democratic Party being the abusers in this case. At some point, you got to walk. If you're not willing to walk, they don't care. They don't care. That crack addict alcoholic is not in any way going to ever change if you continue to enable that crackhead alcoholic. If he slaps you and you're there in the morning, what stops him from slapping you? Yes, you can learn karate, but also the capacity of being willing to walk. Do you have a spine or not? Do you have a spine or not? From a long-term perspective, I don't see another solution to this. You have nothing else to pressure your party. There's nothing else. There's nothing on the wings that is pressuring that party. And the pressure here is created by the people saying, we're not willing to vote for anything below this line. And you will lose if you go beyond this point. Yes, it takes a little bit, something less than cowardice. Yes, it requires you to not be cowards, political cowards. That's true, it does. And I'm not necessarily saying it's easy. I will guarantee you this, though. If Democrats hadn't won in Virginia, and they hadn't won in some of these other states, they would not be so quick to get rid of the Unity Reform Commission. They would not be so quick to dismiss it. Their losing was the impetus for the commission in the first place. And it's not, again, that I want Republicans to win. It's this point of looking at politics beyond one election cycle. How do you pressure that party when there's nothing on the wings to pressure that party? Ultimately, all your bitching and moaning and protesting, at the end of the day, if you're not willing to walk when they blow you off, then none of your bitching and moaning matters. That's the whole point. Who is this? Pat Hacker, vote independent and third party in 2018. Yes, Pat Hacker, I agree. I agree. Oh, and in fact, let me say it this way. Vote for who represents your interests. I don't want to just whitewash it and say vote independent third party. There are some people who are running in the Democratic Party. I agree with if I was in West Virginia, I would vote for what's her name? I can't think of her name. Swearengin. I'd vote for Swearengin if I was in West Virginia. I like her. So I can't give this blank slate. I would vote for the Orange Stash. I would vote for that guy. I like that guy. Particularly since he's going to take down Paul Ryan. That by itself, man, that would be earth-shattering if you take out Paul Ryan. I like Stephen, the guy I met he's in California. I like that guy. Like, there's certain people around the country that I actually like. And if, again, Bernie Sanders ran in 2020, Bernie Sanders would get my vote. Even though he would be running as a Democrat. It is more important to vote for the people who represent your interests. And I say that because those people, yes, they may run under the banner and the machinery of the Democratic Party. But certainly they're not like those people and the agenda of those people is going to be fundamentally different than what the party is. There's a reason that the party is locking these people out and not giving these people the same support as they would give, some of the other people who toe the party line. Vote who represent your interests. But yeah, Pat, unfortunately, the people who represent your interests are usually in the third party or independents. So yes, Pat, vote independent or third party in 2018, Pat Hacker. With the modifier that I would add to it, unless there is a person who you believe represents your interests in one of the other parties. Yes, Pat, and thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Who's the other person? Jim Hyden. Jim Hyden, thank you, man. I didn't see this. Almost missed this. Jim, thank you, man. I appreciate this. And again, Jim, leave a comment. Leave a comment. Leave a comment. Bob Ramirez, vote for a pony. At least your dainty hands remain clean. I think he's attacking me because I voted for Jill Stein. I think he attacked me because I voted for Jill Stein. And I get what you're saying. I think I get what you're saying. The analogy itself is fucking hilarious. It took me a while to get this. Bob Ramirez uses the dainty hand analogy when he's talking about me. He's being derisive towards me. I think what he's saying is be a man and vote for Trump. Because at the very least, you're getting your hands dirty. It's like you're killing a bear or something like that. It's like, all right, you've identified the problem. You not voting against them, meaning voting for Joe Stein, is not the same thing as voting against the Democratic Party. Voting against them would have been voting Republican. I just fundamentally disagree with this. I think you should vote for the person who represents your interests. None of this fucking around with political gamesmanship. Who do I want to represent me? That person is Joe Stein. So that's who I voted for. But I get the analogy. The analogy is funny. It's like getting your hands dirty by killing a man. In this case, getting your hands dirty by voting for the person who you don't want to vote for and you don't believe represent your interests in order to smite the eye of the Democratic Party. Yeah, I can disagree with that, man. I disagree with that, Bob. Vote for who represents your interests. Sad 67. Again, thank you, Sad. They're ignoring us right now after cheating and losing. Imagine if they had won. Do the Cedars think they would care what we say? The idea of voting them in and pushing them left is a pipe dream. Yes, yes. It's like they will make the argument that says, look, you just have to vote them in. You have to push. You have to push. Activism is the way to get things done. Union and activism. What the fuck are you talking about? Where has that worked? Do you believe that the state of America right now is a testament for the last 20, 30 years of that policy working? It is not. It is not. They ignore you because they know that at the end of the day, you'll get on your shows and say, vote Hillary. That's why you're ignored. You're ignored for the same reason the black community is ignored and unions are ignored. Because at the end of the day, you're terrified of Republicans. Meaning, it doesn't matter what Democrats do. As long as they can make the argument of least worse, the Cedars of the world, the Turks of the world, these guys will look at these things from one election cycle to the next and scream and bitch and moan about how awful Democrats are, but you gotta vote for that particular Democrat that does not represent your interests. They would use all sorts of names. They would call it strategic and all this other stuff. It boils down to political cowardice and bad strategy. Said 67, thank you. And I agree with you, man. You're in charge of you. The hard part is being prepared to split the vote and lose to Trump again. Even though I'm with Bernie or the People's Party all the way, it still gives pause. You're in charge of you. Yeah, you're right. I don't say this lightly, man. I don't take this political position in a light way. Like, for me, I didn't think the choice between Hillary and Bernie was easy. Even though they cheated me, I didn't think it was easy. I thought Trump was a maniac. Even though I understand a lot of stuff was political spin and gamesmanship and everything else, it still gave me pause. Now, I say that to say that despite it still giving me pause, what was problematic to me was, how can you co-sign cheating? And what does it mean for you to ever want to get stuff done for the party to say, not only do you have nowhere else to go, we can cheat you. It can be open and known that we cheated you, and we still have you to be complacent and vote for us. Talk about being emasculated. Talk about being emasculated. Yes, I agree with you, Tim. I agree with you, you're in charge. It does give you pause. But by the same token, at which point do you get change? At which point do you believe that doing what you've always done is going to give you some level of change? I want and a lot of other people believe, particularly if you're talking about the Democratic Party, and even if you ask Democrats, they will fall in line with the Sanders argument. Now, I've showed you video after video after video of people who pushing the Democratic line, pushing the line, trying to board a burning ship, but at the same token will still say vote Democrat. But they're telling you, even these guys who are pushing for the party itself, will tell you, yes, they're bought. Yes, this is corporate interest. Yes, they want superdelegates in order to deny you the capacity to vote for who you want as a candidate. They're bought. They're just as obsequious to cash as Republicans. So the argument that I'm making here is the problem is both. The problem is not one or the other. The problem is both. And you don't get change in the Democratic Party, meaning the left-leaning party, in this way by just being complicit. Even though, yes, you cheated me, here's my vote. That's my argument. That's my basic point that I'm trying to make. You're ignored because they know that at the end of the day, here's my vote. Doesn't matter what we do, here's my vote. Dude, you just said you would vote for Paula and Randy Bruce. You admit voting in certain types of Democrats is an option. Yes, I agree. I agree. I don't... Look, you've never heard me say, as a blanket, and I even said in this video, that I wouldn't completely ignore voting for somebody who I think represents my interests. Yeah. I don't like the gamesmanship of I'm going to vote for this guy who I absolutely hate and think is a miserable person in order to smite the eye of Democrats. I don't think that at all. If I was in West Virginia and Paula Swearengin was running, she'd get my vote. I like her. I like her. Same thing with Randy Bruce, particularly if he's taking out Paul Ryan. There are some people who I actually like who are running as Democrats. That's why I don't have this blanket idea of don't vote for any Democrat. See, yeah. But my litmus test is, are they going to represent my interests? Yes or no? If that answer is no, I don't give a shit who they are, then they're not getting my vote. If the answer is yes, I get my vote. I like that process because that process doesn't necessarily attack good people who may be running under Democrats because they want the machinery of the Democratic Party. So, yeah, there's some level of what's the word I'm looking for? Of specificity in the way I go about it. Yeah. Yeah. Don't blame the Green Party. They lose by design. Oh, Bob. Gardner, I vote Green because they are the most in line with my views, but I have no illusions about them. Same here, Gardner. Agreed. Captain Obvious. Fletcher Daniels, nah. Bob is advocating kamikaze voting, although he is free to dispute that if I'm misrepresenting his stance. Yeah, Captain Obvious, I think that's what's going on. Julie S. Moni G, some states won't consider write-in as counts, right? Some, they just throw them away. Some do. California allow, but I believe California hid the write-ins. Lots dislike Hillary. Hillary is #1 most disliked politician. Up until Trump, Julie. Up until Trump. Before Trump, yes, it was Hillary. By and large, yes. Mikey Mike, the Russian bot. SIP. Remember that when you drive down a public road in socialist transportation. We don't have socialist transportation. We have fucking private interests that is out to charge and all this other stuff. Don't you dare take a stand against the Democrats, JT. What are you talking about? Bob Ramirez. I have no idea what you're talking about. I think Bob is being... Skip Rock. Hillary was the captain of the DNC Titanic, and she crashed it into an iceberg named Donald Trump. Yet, it wasn't just her, man. All of those institutions who were lefty institutions that shredded their dignity and any level of belief in self or any level of integrity in self. Integrity is the wrong word for it. What's the word I'm looking for? Dignity. Yeah, dignity is the word I'm looking for. Who shredded their dignity and went to the polls and voted for Hillary Clinton and shredded their dignity that much more when they told their people who watched their channel, who were lefties, to vote for that woman. And she lost. Meaning, yeah, they shredded their dignity and she lost. They shredded their dignity for a failure of a candidate. You have been better off telling your audience, this is not what we want. This is not a line that we're willing to cross, and the answer is no. You would have been better off. Your strengthiness would have been more outright and more in the open of a lot of people saying no. The Unity Reform Commission would be bolstered now if you would have said no, but you didn't do that. You told your 3 million people to vote Hillary. Or your 200,000 people to vote Hillary. Or whatever number to vote Hillary. Applies hemp moisturizer to my dainty ass. Yeah, unlikely ally. Kicking it with my dog. The heart of the DNC is corporate and Wall Street. Yes, that's my point. That's the point I'm trying to get at. These guys are bought. And you get nowhere telling them to vote for people who are bought. That's the point I'm trying to get at. We should have a coast-to-coast bullet trains, of course. Yeah, do you understand we spend nearly $1 trillion on military? The Democratic Party by itself spent $1 billion on 5 consultants. I'm trying to get this idea of how much money is just sloshing through the political process. You don't have healthcare, they have it abroad. Across the pond, they have it there. You don't have high-speed bullet rails, they have it across the pond. You don't even have public education. They have it in some of the countries across the pond. We spend nearly $1 trillion on military. And none of those things we have, but they have it in European countries. One of the things that you see when you go to a European country that amazes you is, wow, I didn't realize that governance could be this way. Meaning I didn't realize you could have these type of societies. Because in the United States, you don't have those type of societies. You pay at every toll, one toll roll after the next, where private interest merges with the government, where this private corporation has somehow worked out a deal where they can get all this toll money from you. You don't have access to rail. What is your train system like? I wanted to take a train from Virginia to Chicago. 20-something hours. 20-something hours. I'm trying to make the point to you that the life that you're living doesn't have to be this way. And continuously supporting a party that doesn't believe in the same things that you believe in, regardless of the words that they say and the things that come out of their mouth, will not get you to that point. That's the point I'm trying to make to these people. Long story short, we need to make the candidate earn our vote. Yes. Yes, the natural progressive. Yes, agreed. Hey, Brom, call in if you want. Feel free. If somebody has had my if any of my patrons wants to call in, feel free. Feel free. We can take this for 2 hours, so I can take a few calls. Because I know there will be people who disagree with me on this. So feel free to call into the show. In fact, let me pull my thing up. Pull my mail up. That sounded slightly nasty. My wife, my fucking awesome wife, who is with a husband that doesn't believe in Valentine's Day and all this other stuff, and she deals with that stuff. She bought me a keyboard and a mouse for Valentine's Day because it's such a pain in the ass to reach over to the computer once the camera and everything is set up. My wife's fucking awesome. So, I appreciate her and I thank her. Moni G, wow, is that allowed? They can just throw out your vote even if you write it? Yes, that's true. They can just throw out your vote. It doesn't have to, they don't have to take it at all. I would call in, but I'd want to talk Jimmy versus Sam stuff and don't have the energy. J. Scott, you can talk Jimmy versus Sam stuff. Feel free. You said I don't have the energy. Look, I am, that conversation really does boil down, Jay, to reformer versus revolt. The argument of the reformist versus the argument of the person who's sick of the way things are. That's the crux of that conversation. And for that matter, that's the crux of the argument with TYT and all this stuff. When people are saying, I'm the true left. This is the true left. That's what they're talking about. That the reformers versus the revoltists, the people who consider themselves, whether they consider themselves true left or not, both are in the same sandbox on this. Both of you are the true left. What you're arguing about is tactics. How do you get the goal that you want? So yeah, reform versus revolt. I agree. Yeah, I think that's the conversation. So, and the reason why I nail that in, like I want to drill that in a very strident way. The Sam Cedars of the world, the Young Turks of the world, they're not your enemies on this stuff. They're your enemies if you're talking about getting stuff accomplished. Yes. But in regards to the end result of what you want to get accomplished, they're still within your circle. There is no right-winger that looks at you and TYT and thinks that there's a difference in those things. None. It's like going to some other country and somebody seeing that you're black and the first thing that they say is you're an American, not that you're black. You're on a political spectrum. Someone else that's not on that spectrum looks at you and does not see a difference in those things because there's fundamentally not a difference in those things. There may be a difference in policies. Don't misunderstand me. But I'm saying from a broad context, The difference and the problem here is one side wants the system to keep it the way it is and believes that they can maneuver within the system the way it is. And the other side is saying that your failures boil down to you wanting to deal with the system the way it is. Pulling yourself out of it is the crux of the issue, is the crux of the matter. You don't have anything pressing against the system itself. The only thing you have pressing against it is you. Whether or not you feed into it, whether or not you give your energy to it. And the capacity to pull out of it and say, I'm done. This is the bar I'm willing to go. This is my bar. This is my level. You either hit my level or you don't get my vote. That being done in mass, that being done in solidarity is profound, and that changes politics. What you're talking about is just being complicit. That does not. That does not. I got emails from, I think you're saying Joe Biden. Biden yesterday, what the fuck is he thinking? I marked them as spam. You're not taking Joe Biden's emails? I can't watch Sam Cedar anymore. It's too frustrating. I like Sam Cedar when he's going after libertarians. That's the funniest shit in the world to me. Man, I can binge watch that. I can sit there and watch like for hours. It is one of the funniest videos that you would ever see. He had tearing them apart limb by limb, and their arguments get crazier and crazier as they try to take him on this. There was one guy who was a professor that was getting pissed off. Sam was just picking the guy apart. But when they get into politics and, being obsequious to Democrats, yeah, I can't deal with them. They lose me. They totally lose me at that part. Jamal thinks TYT operates on ideas. They do not. In a sense, they are apolitical. They are capital enterprise. They are a capital enterprise, but be fair. Come on. Come on. You got to be fair, Cardone. I don't think you're being fair. I mean, and the reason why I say I don't think you're being fair, I actually do think when they started the network, they had certain ideas that they wanted to get across. And I actually do think that for all intents and purposes, maybe up until the point they got that $20 million, or up until the point Trump got elected, that there were ideas and there were things that they pushed that they wanted to get accomplished. You can make an argument on whether or not they stuck to that once they became this kind of full-on capitalistic enterprise, meaning here's cash, but that cash doesn't affect me. That may or may not be true. And you can make that case. You can make that argument that at this point they're just fully capitalistic enterprise like MSNBC or any other news agency that gets money to propagate itself. Fair enough. But I don't think it's fair to say that they did not start off that way. They did not start off that way. They didn't start off that way. Personally, I like Real News Network. The Real News Network, TYT, MSNBC. Yeah, I like Real News. I like Real News. You are in charge of you. How do we get people like yourself, or even more well-known, like Cal Kalinske or Naomi Kuntz on national television? Like Bill Maher or The Nightly Show. That, in my opinion, is the next major step. Those people would never bring me on television. And those people, maybe Cal. Yeah, maybe Cal. And definitely Nomika. So Nomika Kuntz has been on TV. I've seen her on like CNN or something like that. Because she was, representing the quote-unquote burning wing of things. So when they would have the Unity Reform Commission, if they brought it up at all, she would be to some degree the face of it. In some cases, and maybe I'm thinking of something else, but I could have swore I saw her on CNN. But yeah, national TV, they tend to hire security forces. They tend to hire people who worked and who lied under oath. Jimmy Dore will probably interview you. Jimmy Dore doesn't know who I am, so that would take the first step. Prom SL1. Everyone, please keep your eyes on Citizens Against Plutocracy. We're going to be doing some big things. So, Citizens Against Plutocracy is something similar to what I'm saying. This is no argument. This a C4 candidate. C4 candidates are candidates who get out of this sleazy word games. This idea of, we're going to represent freedom. I have no idea what that means. We're going to bring back jobs. I have no idea what that means. We're going to be against trade deals. We're going to be for healthcare. I don't know what you mean by being for healthcare. It doesn't mean you're for single payer. I didn't say that. I didn't say that. You're getting ahead of me, buddy. I didn't say that at all. CFAR tries to nail them down to say that these are the things I pledged that I will do this when I'm in that office. And you can hold me accountable to that particular pledge by not voting for me the next time and voting my ass out of office next time around. That's a CFAR pledge. It's specific. What are you going to do when you're in office? I am going to do this, 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 and this. And you can say yes or no, when you're looking at the pledge during the next election cycle, you can hold me accountable based on the things that I've said because I've explicitly enumerated those things. I love the idea. I love the idea. We need to get out of this stuff as lefties. We need to stop with this to not play their games of word games. When Paul Ryan screams out freedom, Paul Ryan is talking about freedom for very select, that 1% who gives him money and stuff money in his G-string. He's not talking about you. He would use those words in soaring rhetoric, or, well, to the degree that Paul Ryan can do that. But he's not talking about you. Same thing with Obama. When he's talking about freedom and all this other stuff and hope of change, he's not talking about you. He's not talking about you. So yeah. Jay Scott, CFAR candidates are mostly Democrats, but you guys hate Democrats. I don't understand what you're advocating for. Well, Jay Scott, I've been open and honest with this. I don't know what your misunderstanding is, unless you're not talking about me specifically. I don't care if the person runs as a Democrat, if the person is towing my agenda or the things that I care about, if they're not trespassing across my border, my esoteric border of the line that I draw in the sand and what I'm willing to represent. I don't care what they are. They can be Republicans, they can be Greens, they can be Democrats, they can be fucking alien from Mars. I don't care. I care about what they do. What are they going to represent? If that person just so happens to be a Democrat, that person just so happens to be a Democrat. I already said I'm voting Bernie Sanders if Bernie Sanders runs. Bernie Sanders will likely be running as a Democrat. He will still get my vote. It's not what's attached to them in the sense of a label. It's what they represent. Do I believe that they represent my interests? Yes or no? That's where it begins and ends with me. My dainty hands may not get to the point of voting for Trump on this. But if a candidate is going to enumerate out what he will represent, even if that guy's a Democrat, that guy's getting my vote. That guy's getting my vote. Don't hate real Democrats, but I do hate most of them in office. They're full of corporate agenda. Yeah, Mars, but that's the problem. The majority of them are these corporatists, warmongers, hacks. So yeah, the majority of them don't get my vote. And yeah, when I look at the entirety of the party, and I'm making my argument in the sense of saying these guys are not your saviors. Of course, I'm talking about the majority of the party. I'm not talking about specific candidates here and there. Yes, they tar themselves by calling themselves Democrats. By the same token, they're using the machinery that's in place. If they stand out, and I'm like, yes, I think that person represents my interests, that person has a track record, that person is running in a particular way, there's something I could judge them by, then yeah, they may get my vote. But I need to believe that they're representing my interests. That's the key point. And the majority of these people, the majority of the party, the leadership of the party, does not. Does not. I don't know how you can look at those other videos where you literally had a plutocrat screaming, foaming at the mouth in the camera without a neck saying, shut up about billionaires. And I called Nancy Pelosi and I called Chuck Schumer and I told him to shut up. Think about that. Like, understand the gravity of that. I know when you're in a moment of something and you don't necessarily feel the gravity in the context, but think of the gravity of a plutocrat screaming blue in the face that he's calling your representatives, the people who say they're representing your interests and who screams at the top of their lungs about how they're looking for a better deal and all this other stuff. He called them and told them to shut up about class, or I will shut my wallet. I will stop bribing you if you don't shut up about class. I will stop giving you money. That's called a bribe. That's literally called a bribe. There's nothing else that's called. I'm giving you money to do something, and I will take this money away if you refuse to do it. That's a bribe. He's on open television saying, I am bribing Democrats to not talk about class. That is fucking massive. Now, again, Republicans are not your saviors. They're worse. When you had the Republican guy who was doing this tax bill where they were giving trillions to plutocrats at the back and at the expense of you, screaming at the top of their lungs, oh my God, we got to do something about the debt. We're going to be Greece. We're going to be Zimbabwe. We got to do something about the debt. I will die on the flag before I let 1 red cent, or if I put 1 red cent on the back of my grandkids. This is the shit that Republicans were saying. We will not raise the debt 1 iota. Trump gets in office. Okay, we're raising it $9 trillion. We're raising it $9 trillion. Hey, I thought you guys were the ones that cared about the debt. Fuck that. We're in office now. We only care about the debt when Democrats are in office. In the same way that Democrats only care about the poor when Republicans are in office. They think you're stupid. This is a game. We're saying don't play. We're saying don't play. And by the way, the money on the backs of us, meaning they raise the debt in order to give plutocrats more money. Trump is not your savior. Republicans are not your savior. One of the Republicans came out saying that his donors was like, unless you pass that tax bill, lose our numbers. If you don't pass it, lose our numbers. Plutocrats have gotten to the point where they feel it's perfectly okay to get on national television and tell you how bribed your politicians are. Does a politician still have legitimacy if you know that politician is being bribed? And should you give them your vote if they are being bribed? I think that's a fair question. Certainly they're not being bribed for your interests. Come on. Hard Bastards keeps responding to everything bad about Trump and his cabinet with, I've accepted that he's a Republican, but then insists that Democrats are somehow worse. Yeah. I don't agree with, Look, I think Hard Bastard goes to the right, so I think he's a Republican. So from his standpoint, yeah, he's going to believe that. But protecting Trump and the ridiculous maniac shit that he does is not the path. That is not the path. I don't know what Hard Bastard is doing. I don't know what he's pushing for. I don't know his politics. Not in a concrete way. But I may go after Democrats, but Trump is not your savior. Trump is not your savior. Trump is a fucking maniac. And you are at a terrible tipping point right now. Meaning Donald Trump is getting you into a situation in Syria. Yes, Hillary Clinton would have got you there faster, but he's putting you at a precipice in Syria that may lead to a wider conflict with Russia. Now, yes, Democrats are making this worse because they're pushing this kind of Russia angle and all this other stuff, and they're whipping up this ferment about Russia and Trump and all this other stuff. The reality of the situation is we've killed Syrian soldiers. If somebody said Russian soldiers were part of that process. But we've killed Syrian soldiers. The Russian military has allied itself with Syria. We are in that country illegally. Whatever you want to say about Donald Trump, do you believe that he has the finesse of JFK? He's a fucking cartoon character. The man was a reality show host. Now he's in charge of like $1 trillion military. And he's getting us more entrenched in Syria. And it is very possible that we end up with a wider scale conflict with Russia because of the shit he's doing in Syria. He is not your savior. I understand that some right-wingers think that, he's fighting the globalists and everything else. Donald Trump is only out for Donald Trump. Keep the shit real. Just because I may have smiled when Hillary Clinton lost that election, it didn't mean that I was happy that Donald Trump won it. He is not your savior. People need to be very clear on this. That just because one is bad, it does not make the other one better. It's not one of these things where we're graded on the curve. Both are problematic. That's the point that I'm getting at here. Anybody else who's telling you Donald Trump is awesome and they're on the left, they're lying to you. They're lying to you. The argument that I often hear is that left-wingers try to do, and that they're right on, is that these people are screaming about Donald Trump but gave Democrats a pass. That argument is potent as potent can be, but don't lose sight of the fact that what they're screaming about is actually real. The argument that lefties make, that I often make, is, yes, but if Democrats were doing the same thing, maybe to a lesser degree, but if they were doing the same thing, why are you screaming about this with Trump? Why are you screaming about it with Trump? You didn't scream about it in the last case. Why are you screaming about it now? That's the argument that I hear lefties make. But that doesn't mean that what Trump is doing is not good. It's not bad. He is a maniac. Skip Rock, I'm on the right. I know you are, Skip. I know you are. I think that you're here, though, because at the very least you think I try to be fair when I'm dealing with Trump. But I think you also know that I don't particularly like him. I love HB and I love Jamal. Cheeky Rogue, thank you, Cheeky Rogue. Pat Hacker, it's easy for new YouTubers to bend towards their popular demographics. That's also true. And I've tried not to do that. I've tried, man, you have no idea how hard it is not to do that. It's hard to do. It's like, look, the problem isn't a YouTuber. The problem is capitalism. Let's be honest. The problem is this maximization of profit. It's like, what are the ways and the means that you go about maximizing your profit? You're maximizing what's in your best interest. Fuck the reality, or what's integrity, or fairness, or something that goes in regards to the better for the society itself. Those things run counter to what you yourself may need and the things that allow you to get further ahead. So, if you are a Bernie Sanders person, if you were a full-throated supporter of Bernie Sanders, you got pissed off at the DNC, and so you just consistently bash Hillary Clinton and the DNC, and you realize, holy shit, there's a market here. There's a market here. I'm a Bernie person, but fuck, man, there's a market here. It is not the easiest thing to do to look over. I could potentially quit my job, you know, catering to this particular demographic, and just say, but nah, that's okay. Fuck all. I don't want to do that. I want to just give my honest opinion on issue by issue by issue, and I don't necessarily want to be in any particular camp and attack. You know, that's not the easiest thing to do. The same thing, you know, going the other way of, I'm going to just attack XYZ, or I'm just going to do that. That's not the easiest thing to do. And fact is, I try to avoid that because I try to just say, what's me in all this process? Like, what's me? What do I believe? What do I like? What do I dislike? What are the things that I try to purport? What is the thing? Where's the stake that I put myself in the ground on? And I try to do stories. So my stories end up all over the place. Talking about Star Trek one day, talking about aliens the other day, talking about consciousness one day, talking about politics one day, talking about music, talking about sex, talking about... It runs the gambit. But it's not easy to do. It's not easy to just ignore that stuff. HA is on the Trump train for 2020. I got him on. No way. I don't believe it. If Trump runs against Bernie Sanders, I would almost guarantee you HA would not be on the Trump train. My curiosity here is always, if it's Trump and Sanders, and HA switches over to Sanders, how's his audience going to take that? I'm curious. I'm so curious about that. What is his audience going to do? What is his audience going to do? I feel the same way about HA that I do about HB. HB's TYT takedown are a blast. That's funny. Video game Vision Quest. Organized, privatized, COINTELPRO. COINTELPRO. Infiltrating groups and all. HA would do the math in his head. Well, see, you're believing that HA is purely just in the bag for Trump. Or in the bag because it's padding his wallets. Like, my audience are Trump supporters, so I'm going along with that audience. Yes, but to a point. To a point. Look, from a standpoint, you must understand, HA started his videos dealing with Sanders. I've heard HA say that he is for Bernie Sanders, and that a lot of the stuff is because of what the Democrats did. So he goes with this thing of, it is better to inflate Godzilla in order to fight King Kong. That's his basic point. That's his basic premise. Now, I haven't heard HA in a while, but I don't know if he's deviated from that premise. If it's Sanders versus Trump, either he has to repudiate his other videos, which is going to make him look kind of rough. That's kind of difficult to do. But since there are a few weeks talking about Sanders. But B, I think he's still for Sanders. I don't think he's changed over. The guy's a lefty. There's no way that he can honestly look at what's taking place in regards to what Trump is doing in this country and come away from this process as, yep, that's what I want. I don't believe it. I don't believe it. I would be shocked as shit if that was true. I would be shocked as shit. Cheeky Rogue, except Bemis says Russia, Russia, Russia a lot. I'm disappointed in Bernie not speaking the truth to power. Cheeky Rogue over there, I agree with you. I agree with you. I did a video. I said I don't know if he believes it or if it's because he feels like Trump is a bigger threat, so he's working with Democrats in order to go with Trump. I don't particularly care. I don't particularly care. I don't like it. I mean, I don't like this idea of pushing us in the direction of another country. It's a fucking horrible idea. 989898987. What's your opinion on Sargon of Akkad switching from Sanders to Trump? I don't have an opinion on it because I don't know Sargon of Akkad. I know of him, but I don't know anything that he's done in regards to his videos. Epic episode, by the way, Jamal. Video game Vision Quest. Oh, thank you. It's run long, but my spill is always in the beginning, and I let the audience do the rest. I said that before, man. I do videos like this where I let the audience have their say because oftentimes I don't necessarily get to see the comments as much as I used to. And I feel like if I'm saying something that my audience members are like, we don't like, we disagree. And sometimes there may be things I need to clarify. Meet me outside after lunch. Meet me outside after lunch. I'd rather vote for that ham sandwich. Thomas Sermon. If a ham sandwich was on the ballot, that ham sandwich would have gotten my vote. I agree. HA is heavily motivated by pride. He shares the straight with Cenk Garno. Rainbow Boom X. I want to see Bush Sr. and Jr., Bill, and Hillary Clinton and Obama behind bars. Add Trump to that mix and you would have my agreement. Justice can't be one of those things where it's selective. If it's going to be justice, it's going to be justice. If it's illegal for Bush to invade a country and kill 1 million Iraqis and create this havoc all throughout the world, if it's illegal for Bush to torture human beings, then he should be held to account for that, not have those powers expanded. If it is illegal for Obama to go bombing in one country after the next that he has no real constitutional justification for, and he should have been challenged on that, by the way. He should have been challenged on that. He should have been made to prove that in court that he has the authority to go bombing in one country after the next like a king. And at the very least, if he's going to continue to do it, to make him do it overtly against the Constitution of the United States. It should have been overt. He's killed thousands of civilians in the policies that he's taken. So yeah, when you have situations where 90% of the people you kill are civilians, I have a problem with the person and putting somebody else in office who's going to do the exact same thing. I have a problem. I have a problem supporting that. Donald Trump gets into office, does the exact same thing, but worse. Moves the bombing elements, meaning moves the drone program or elements of the drone program into the CIA also. So you don't necessarily know how many people are being murdered when the CIA is dropping those bombs. And I've read stuff that says those things have skyrocketed by 400%. All of them should be behind bars. They're going after the guy from Nicaragua, from the Philippines, Duarte. That's laughable. That's laughable. Of everybody around the globe who you're looking at that's causing problems and travesties and massive calamities around the globe, you lay that out. Honestly, you lay that out. And what you come to is this little country in the Philippines. That's the problem. That's the problem. Not going into a country killing 1 million people. Not having all of these people ferret out and bomb after bomb after bomb in one country after the next, killing massive number of civilians. That's not the problem. The problem is Duarte. The problem is Duarte. It's fucking amazing. Don't you think Trump is a continuation? Yeah, these are these. Yeah, I agree. I think Trump is a continuation of the prior presidents. This is kind of my point. People act like the world fell off a cliff when Trump took office. Trump is an extension of the prior president, who's an extension of the prior president, who's an extension of the prior president. The powers that are included in office in one president are used by the next president. No president gives away power in that way. Done. The powers that Obama used that people thought was perfectly okay up to murdering American citizens. When Trump does it, I hope they'll be okay with it also. I hope they're going to be okay with it. Trump is a placeholder. Of course, he's doing more of the same, but he's much more transparent about it. Yes, that I agree with you. He's a bad liar. That's the first point. And media hates him, so they air everything that takes place. Even though they don't, it's weird. They go after him on this Russia stuff. They completely ignore the other stuff, the corporate stuff. The stuff where the major changes that he's making to the country, the attacks on workers, some of the other stuff that's coming up. I have an article that I was going to do with Trump trying to give boxes of food to people who need food stamps. I mean, it's fucking ridiculous stuff. He's a fucking idiot. And Democrats can't come up with a consistent argument to attack him that doesn't involve Russia. It shows you how weak and feckless that party is. The party's worthless. Absolutely worthless. Jamal, bring on Max Blumenthal or Ben Norden. You act like I have the power to pull these people in. I could try. I could try. Ben Norden. I've heard of Ben Norden, and I've actually read pieces that Ben Norden has written. Sidney Blumenthal, I probably will not have the star power to pull him in. But I'll try. I will try. Alright guys, I'm going to end this here. This has been 2 hours. It's been rather longer than I wanted. Guys, when I'm doing my spill, patrons have the capacity to call in. Feel free. Feel free. I haven't expanded it to everyone because my feeling is, A, I don't want crazies calling in. That's the first point. But B, I kind of want to give something special to people who donate and contribute to the channel. You guys keep the channel running. I've said it before, my wife and I are switching positions. And switching positions, the next position I take on, I want it to be a part-time position while at the same token being able to allow me to do this. So you guys help a ton through your super chats and through your patrons and everything else, your patron donations. So thank you very much. So I'm going to end that here. Feel free to call in when I'm doing my spill, towards the end, at the end of my spill, patrons. And I'm going to thank everybody for tuning in. So if you enjoy the content, feel free to share, like, subscribe, and of course, you can always support through Patreon, which I've already said. Thanks, guys.